When you think of strategy, the popular singer Madonna probably doesn't spring to mind. You probably wonder why she enters a conversation about strategy. Yet Madonna has been, throughout her decades-long career, one of the shrewdest strategists in the entertainment industry we've ever seen. In 1977, Madonna Louise Ciccone left Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she was a relatively unknown student, studying dance at the University of Michigan. She arrived in New York City with $35 to her name and carrying a determination, a focus to make it big in the entertainment business. Sure, she had her training in dance, but little else, no musical background and no contacts in the industry. This hardly seems a formula for success, but we now recognize a great legend when we see one and how that contributes to an enduring and consistent sense of mission. Which is why exactly that Madonna's career teaches us much about key facets of strategy: focus, strategic intent, adaptability, and sustainable competitive advantage. Madonna's relentless drive and her shrewd instincts about the music business led her to identify the pathways and the gatekeepers of the industry. She then focused on those pressure points, especially the DJs of New York clubs, whom she correctly recognized as holding the keys to popularity and eventual success. Madonna gives the lie to the instant success or the discovery myth. Her hard work was legendary. Her relentless networking and developing of contacts was paralleled by her conscious development of a unique style. Her style was unlike others of the time and would soon set the trend for an entire generation of teenage girls. Madonna burst onto the national and international scene with her first album, Madonna. The impact was sudden, and to the world at large, it was a huge surprise. She seemed to have come from nowhere. But her first album was the successful result of a superb strategy developed by a superb business strategist. Madonna articulated her core mission. She established her objectives. She adopted a relentless strategic intent, and she recognized that she could carve out uncontested market space by developing a unique selling proposition and a personal brand unlike anyone else's. Madonna's first album was incredibly successful, but she was only at the start of her amazing career. She brazenly articulated her strategic intent in her debut on the television music show American Bandstand, when host Dick Clark asked her the question, "What do you really want to do when you grow up?" Madonna answered, "Rule the world." She went on to star in several films, and her second album, Like a Virgin, sold more than 3 million copies. Her third album, True Blue, sold 24 million copies. And as the 1990s unfolded, Madonna's popularity continued. She developed professionally in addition to her singing, and she became a true Renaissance businesswoman. She developed acute interests in intellectual property, book publishing, music production, concert production, motion pictures, business management, art direction, and perhaps most important, manager of her personal brand. "I'm tough," she said in 1985. "I'm ambitious and I know exactly what I want." This was just 8 years after she arrived in New York with a pocket full of small bills. So what's the Madonna secret? Is there a Madonna secret? Well, there must be. After all, Madonna is not the most attractive star in her various worlds. She's not the best dancer. She's not the best singer. But Madonna has no equal in assembling all of the entertainment success factors into a strategic position, unique and powerful. Her strategic position has proven unassailable. While other acts have come and gone since 1983, Madonna has remade herself and remade herself again. Madonna has a shrewd business acumen that most businesses should envy. She maintains her competitive position by way of a series of shrewd competitive moves that are coolly calculated. They keep her at the cutting edge of pop culture as a leader and trendsetter in that culture. Her 2009 tour ended having grossed more than $400 million from 85 sold-out concerts, attended by thousands of new fans who weren't even born when her first album debuted. No, Madonna is not just another singer. She has a superb personal brand, enormous brand equity, and incredible competitive advantages, carefully nurtured over a long period of time. Madonna offers us a superb, if perhaps surprising, example to make the point that competitive advantage is a concept that we can apply in many areas of competition. In fact, Madonna's overall success is directly attributable to precisely the kind of highly differentiated competitive advantage that is the topic of this lecture. Now, many firms, many people tend to think of competition as doing the same thing as everybody else, only better. An entire industry and management mythos has grown up around this notion: best practices, benchmarking, techniques designed to squeeze just a bit more savings from this process, perhaps save valuable seconds from that process. And that's fine as far as it goes, but it's really just running in place. It's not strategy. And these kinds of activities certainly don't gain us lasting and powerful competitive advantages. Think carefully here. If we do nothing else but benchmark and copy our competitors, we end up playing the great game of mimicry. We offer pale imitations of our competitors' products, and others offer imitations of ours. Is this what Madonna did to achieve stardom? Hardly. If she had merely imitated predecessors like Donna Summer from the disco era, we'd not be talking about her. Let's think differently about competition and what it means to compete effectively. Let's devise a way to differentiate our product, our company, ourselves. And our goal is to develop a unique selling proposition, which is the collection of factors assembled in such a way that it constitutes a distinctive core competency and confers unique competitive advantage. We call this a unique selling proposition, and that unique selling proposition can become the basis for our personal brand. We can go about the business of creating a unique selling proposition for our product or ourselves by starting with Michael Porter's notion of strategy. Determining what we're trying to do with strategies, determining how we want to compete, and determining how we will do things differently. This means choosing a generic strategy and then building on it. It means assembling our resources in new and different ways than our competitors. Now, we can do this in any number of ways, and this is where the spark of creativity and innovation ignite the best and most successful businesses and endeavors. Madonna didn't have a checklist to tell her how to compete. In the early New York years before her first solo album, she was a backup dancer for other acts and a singer in 2 different bands. And she didn't benchmark herself against the competition to give crowds an improved version of the same old thing. No, she looked at her competition in a cool and calculating way to discover her blue ocean. Blue Ocean. This might sound like the title for a song, but blue ocean is a strategic term that first appeared in a 2005 book called Blue Ocean Strategy. W. Chan Kim and Renee Mauborgne, professors at INSEAD, one of the world's great business schools, introduced us to the notion of the blue ocean, uncontested market space carved out by shrewd competitors. Kim and Mauborgne showed that most companies are driven to compete in what they call red oceans. This is an apt name as it evokes the specter of a steaming cauldron of competitors fighting over a shrinking profit pool. Low margins, lots of stress, surviving in a world of commodities. The 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes described a world of unfettered competition as a war of all against all, where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Red ocean competition might not be that bad, but surely there must be something better. The alternative to this unpleasant scenario is to carve out uncontested market space, to differentiate yourself or your product or your service or your firm in some meaningful way to your target market, to find your blue ocean. Here is one way we can do this. It's not a checklist and it's not a formula. It's a method to get you thinking in fresh and different ways about what you do each day. Kim and Mauborgne offer what they call the 4 actions framework. This model challenges what they call the value curve. This value curve depicts how a company is doing across an industry's accepted factors of competition. For instance, let's take automobiles. The accepted factors of competition might be price, prestige, gas mileage, size, comfort, performance, longevity, safety, and service. The conventional competitive model says to compete across the full range of factors. The Blue Ocean strategy argues a different approach. Instead, ask basic questions about the industry with the intent of creating new competitive factors that appeal to unexplored market segments. For example, the Tata Nano consciously chose not to compete on most of the standard features of the industry, instead betting everything on a highly differentiated price strategy, addressing the most ignored market segment in India, the segment at the bottom of the pyramid. This was Tata's unique selling proposition, which allowed the company to explore a blue ocean. Other examples include Chrysler's creation of the minivan format and Toyota's willingness to create a gasoline-electric hybrid car that did not look or perform like existing cars. So let's look more closely at the Kim Marbonnier model for creating uncontested market space, what they call the 4 actions framework. Well, it just consists of 4 questions. It's designed to challenge an industry's established structure and its business logic. Here are those questions. First, which of the factors that the industry takes for granted should be eliminated? Second, which factors should be reduced well below the industry standard? Third, which factors should be raised well above the industry standard? And finally, 4, which factors should be created that the industry has never even offered? Eliminate, reduce, raise, and create. These 4 steps enable you to create a new value curve. It may appear simple enough, but its simplicity, this is deceptive. To develop and then to implement a new value curve requires boldness. It also means that the usual external validation you receive will be absent. Now, this is not a checklist or some kind of 12-step program to attain something that already exists. It requires a brain stretch. It requires creativity and thinking outside of the box. It requires that we offer new factors of competition and that we decide consciously not to compete in some of the standard categories. Let's take an example of how this works. We now look at Yellowtail wine produced by Casella Wines. Yellowtail is an Australian wine that carved out blue ocean uncontested market space for itself by thinking unconventionally to redefine the value curve for the entire wine industry. The conventional value curve consisted of these factors: price, the use of intriguing terminology from the wine industry, high visibility marketing, aging quality, vineyard prestige, wine complexity, and wine range. All prestige wines and all budget wines competed on these factors. The prestige wines at the high end and the budget wines at the low end. But Yellowtail changed this entire strategic profile. Casella Wines brought Yellowtail from Australia to the United States in the year 2000. And by 2003, it was the United States' #1 imported wine. How did it achieve this, even in the midst of a worldwide wine glut? By carving out uncontested market space, Casella downplayed the traditional competitive factors, and it created and excelled on 3 additional competitive factors that other wines could not match. Those factors are easy drinking, ease of selection, and fun and adventure. A selling proposition that was uniquely compelling and new. Yellowtail eliminated the emphasis on wine as complex, properly aged, and characterized by subtleties such as tannins and oak. Yellowtail even eliminated the use of different bottle designs for red and white wines. Yellowtail drastically reduced selection, at first offering just 1 red wine, a Chardonnay, and 1 white wine, a Shiraz. Conversely, Yellowtail raised the level of fun, putting a kangaroo in bright orange and yellow on a very simple label and providing some salespeople with outfits from the Australian outback. Yellowtail even created a new way to present the brand name, using all lowercase letters placed in square brackets, a unique look that was different from anything that had come before. Yellowtail grew quickly, not just by taking market share from established competitors, offering either bottom-end jug wine or higher-priced bottled wine. Instead, Yellowtail grew quickly by actually growing the market itself, selling to new wine drinkers attracted by Yellowtail's distinctive willingness to highlight a single fresh, fruity wine, a wine that could cut through the overwhelming number of choices with a taste and brand that even newcomers could appreciate. With Yellowtail, Casella Wines found the blue ocean that allowed it to prosper, while other wines were suffering through a dip in the industry. And as the industry recovered and grew over the years, well, Yellowtail responded by adding a very small number of additional offerings in a way that continued to reinforce its unique selling proposition. Now, this is just one way to conceive of your strategy, and you can see that it fits into the overall framework we've been discussing throughout these lectures. Doing things differently. Now let's look at this concept of blue ocean strategy at a personal level. How do you compete in your industry? What are the factors that you compete on against others? What makes you unique, special? Anything at all? Or do you compete just like everyone else? Your resume looks like everyone else's. You do the same thing, only better. You're motivated, driven to succeed, have a great work ethic, have lots of experience. Well, this is not the way to carve out blue ocean, uncontested market space. You can go about carving out blue ocean by applying unconventional thinking to familiar situations. You question your assumptions. You change the assumptions. You ask yourself, what might be possible if? Here's an open-ended example. Back in 1993, Coca-Cola Company launched a new ad campaign for its popular Diet Coke brand. Everyone knows and loves Diet Coke. The campaign was designed by longtime Coke ad agency Lintus, New York, one of the largest and most prestigious ad agencies in the world. It launched in January to great fanfare, and it featured the catchy slogan, "Taste it all." If you don't remember this slogan or this campaign, it's because Coca-Cola hated it and pulled the ads after just 6 weeks. Coca-Cola fired Lintus New York as its ad agency. Lintus lost the Diet Coke account, an account worth $95 million per year in billings. Think! They lost the Coke account, an account for one of the most valuable brands in the world. Now imagine the scene in the Lintus building after the announcement. Do you think that folks are striding down the halls, chipper and with big hellos for everyone? You think people want to be seen? Of course not. Doors are closed. Executives are hunkered down. They're updating their resumes and information about their contacts. Upper management is looking for scalps. Who takes the fall for this debacle? In the usual run of things, nameless and faceless mid-level executives are fired as scapegoats. Who was responsible for the debacle, you think? Do you think any person or persons stepped forward and raised their hand to accept responsibility? Lost the Coke account? That was my mistake. Of course, no one did that. Instead, the blame shifting began. Good luck finding that creative team who actually assembled the failed ad campaign. Our natural reaction to such a scenario is perhaps to think, I'm glad I'm not part of that cluster. But think, what would you do in such a scenario? Would you hunker down in conventional fashion? Would you distance yourself from the disaster and hope the Grim Reaper selects someone else for sacrifice? Ask yourself this question. What might happen if someone stepped forward and accepted full responsibility? That was my idea. That was my project. I was responsible. I would have done it. What an opportunity. That was my work that lost our $95 million account. I'm the guy who lost the Coke account. Now, instead of one of the nameless, faceless executives who were fired, I'd seize this chance to establish a bold personal brand, a brand that could not be imitated, a brand with an incredibly memorable tagline, a truly once-in-a-lifetime chance, an incredibly powerful USP. I'm the guy who lost the Coke account. Now, is this a brand of failure? No, not at all. The magnitude and the boldness of the statement, the high stakes involved, and the unusual stance make this selling proposition truly unique. You can have a book deal, and you can be on Oprah's book club. You can become the executive who provides insight on big-time corporate advertising. You land a gig on CNN as a business analyst. You offer yourself as a visionary who can see beyond the big rejection from Coke. Risky? Sure. And 99% of people would hunker down and accept the situation as dire and do the expected thing. Again, where others see only obstacles, train yourself to see opportunity. Was this scenario outlandish? Surely. And I used it to make the point that you can find opportunity in the most absurd situations and the most mundane of situations. The key is to untrain yourself from thinking conventionally and to unharness yourself from the necessity of external validation of your ideas. If something is truly new and fresh and different at its nascent stages, before it actually has form, very few people will recognize it as such. Here's another example of unconventional thinking. BP is a global oil and gas company based in London whose slogan is Beyond Petroleum. The world's third largest fossil fuels company, BP became the object of scorn during the entire summer of 2010 after one of its wells, the Deepwater Horizon, malfunctioned and exploded. The resulting 3-month-long oil leak at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico threatened to become an environmental disaster of unparalleled scale. As days turned into weeks, the public trust in BP, such as it was, plummeted. The oil company struggled to contain both the oil gushing into the Gulf and its increasingly battered reputation, which suffered even more as a result of several public relations gaffes by senior BP leadership. Now, few would have said that BP was an attractive company to work for during that catastrophe. Or was it? It was then that I asked my students to think unconventionally about the situation. I asked them, did BP intend to blow a hole in the floor of the Gulf of Mexico? Of course not. BP did not even own or directly operate the drilling rig that failed. Is BP an evil company? Of course not. A company may be expected to assume ultimate responsibility for operations conducted on its behalf, but BP was not omniscient. Apart from this one incident, BP did not appear to deserve any special scorn when compared with other companies in the oil business. So when BP's fortunes dipped and hit seeming rock bottom in the summer of 2010, I put a challenge to my students. I challenged them to think differently about the situation. I asked them to go beyond the hand-wringing and sloganeering of the moment, to look past the photos of oil-covered birds. I asked them not to join the easy chorus of boos and to do something quite difficult. I asked them to answer some questions. What would I do if I were on the BP team? How might I help turn things around at BP if I were on that team? Then I suggested that they do this. As BP's fortunes completely bottomed out, I urged my graduating students to consider submitting their resumes to BP, to think about joining a company when it's down and what that might actually mean to them professionally. I asked them to think about the future beyond a single summer oil spill and what might happen with this company next year and the next. I asked them what might happen if they were to join the company at its lowest point and to consider whether they might then rise quickly within that company as it quickly recovers. If you join a company when it's down, you consciously swim against the tide. You test yourself and your skills, and in the process, you build a feisty brand. You become known as the gutsy young executive who charged aboard to save the ship when everyone else was jumping off the ship or shunning the company. And if you help turn that company around, you participate in helping to build the lore of the company, perhaps even a new legend, one that you're part of. He jumped into the fire and he turned BP around. Far-fetched? Much less far-fetched than two guys in a garage in Northern California jump-starting the computer revolution with a company they later called Apple. The conventional alternatives are always available, like soldiering in an unmarked cubicle in a multinational company as one of the masses of the latest intake of graduates, or a mid-level manager who doesn't rock the boat. You always have the easy choice of the conventional. It's safe, it's predictable, and the rewards are commensurately small. But great strategy is about unconventional thinking. And this process of unconventional thinking is a part of figuring out what it is that you offer the world. It's a part of discovering and promoting who you are and what you do best. It's a part of establishing your unique selling proposition and your personal brand. It's what sets you apart, what gives you a story to tell, and what sharpens the details of your persona. The personal brand is a tangible example of strategic thinking in action. Most people are oblivious to the concept of the personal brand. Many people in humanities departments in higher education even have an intense bias against the notion of branding persons. I'm a human being, not a product. This is just a matter of terminology. Everyone brands. We just call it something different. In the liberal arts, it's called individualism or having a story to tell. But regardless of what you call it, it serves the purpose of sending a message of what you are all about. Whatever else you do, recognize and accept that you have a personal brand that's yours to cultivate or to neglect. Either way, you will be labeled. Isn't it better to seize control of that process than to allow it to just grow of its own accord? Now, this makes sense as one of the most important strategic acts of your life, to seize control of your public face, your personal brand, your persona. For strategic purposes and for your own success, realize that you are branding yourself every single day, whether you know it or not. You can decide to not participate actively in the branding process. Now, that just means that the branding process moves steadily forward without your direction or even conscious input. It's important that you take control of that process rather than let it unspool on its own, rather than allow others to brand you. Your brand is your reputation. It's what people think first when they see you or hear your name. Brands mean something. Mercedes means quality. Volvo means safety. Wheaties means a breakfast of champions. Allstate means you're in good hands. Intel Inside means a computer you can trust. Now, what image or tagline does your name evoke? Hardworking? Punctual? Always making others around her better? Lazy. He's always a mess in a rumpled suit. She is sharp as a tack. He has it all together. Now, you can choose to opt out from branding and instead argue how people ought to accept you as you are and not judge you by appearances or behavior, how people ought not to pay attention to your hair, your clothing, your speech, your hygiene. You can choose to go that route, but unless you are in the business of social change, that is anything but strategic behavior. It's time to move from the realm of what other people ought to care about to the realm of what they do care about, and consider what you should do to seize control over how you are presented. If you don't get this part right, you handicap whatever strategy you choose to pursue. So, brand yourself consciously. Like the Pennsylvania firm High Concrete Group. We build high concrete structures. Like the old Federal Express slogan, when it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. Like Madonna. So, always be looking toward your own blue ocean. Unleash your creativity in ways that stretch the boundaries of the conventional. Question the assumptions that guide the industry, whether at your individual competitive level or at the firm level. Establish a unique selling proposition that captures a position unlike any other. Now, do I know what your challenges will be? Of course not, and neither do you. That's the nature of an inherently chaotic and unpredictable world. but we can eliminate some of what is commonly done, reduce standards in some ways, raising standards in other ways, and we can seize and even create new opportunities. One way to explore a route to our own blue ocean is to utilize analysis in a systematic way, to explore our external environment for opportunities, and to take our own internal pulse and discover where we're strong, where we need improvement, and what we need that we don't yet have. Our next lecture takes us on an exploratory journey to discover how specific tools of analysis can help us find our own blue ocean by learning to make better assessments of ourselves and the world around us.